We're delighted to have as our guest a gentleman who might be described as a provoker. He provokes people into thinking. Dr. Mortimer J. Adler is our guest, director of the Institute for Philosophical Research. And there are many things. Dr. Adler has been known for his, what others may describe as provocative comments, and they do indeed provoke people into thinking. Dr. Adler, a question, I know the headlines, people all over talk of the television medium. And because it's so close to people, they become involved. And today they feel shocked. They feel scandalized by revelations. There was a cartoon in yesterday's Sun-Times, and may we sort of describe the cartoon, and you might answer, what's wrong with this picture? There's a wall. It's Humpty Dumpty, and on the wall is the legend, cheating on TV quiz shows, and below is the egghead, cracked glasses, of course, and public faith and integrity of eggheads sort of destroyed. What's wrong with this picture?
What's wrong with the picture, Mr. Turkle, is that the people who won money on quiz shows were not eggheads. I mean, let me say it another way, even if they had all been absolutely, scrupulously honest, if there hadn't been any rigging or fixing, and all these people who answered these questions on these various quiz shows did so from the fund of their own information, that wouldn't make them eggheads. It would make them kind of I would think, specialists in memory. Memory isn't the same as mind. Having a well-stocked mind isn't well-stocked with information.
They have facts, and that's it.
That's it. I'll never forget a cartoon that appeared some years ago in the New Yorker. It was a Steig, I think. Not sure of it. It was a man sitting alone at a party. Milling, all people milling around him. He was sitting alone in a chair, and underneath was the caption, "All I know is facts."
All I know is facts. This is not an educated man.
All I know is facts.
What then, Dr. Adler, makes for an educated man? What are the requisites?
Well, as you might suspect, there are many answers to that question. I think an educated man is one who has three virtues, three intellectual virtues. He has understanding, insight, and wisdom. Now, this is a very high demand because most people cannot achieve very much understanding, insight, or wisdom much before the age of 50. So you wouldn't look around and see young men and say they're educated. It takes a long time to become educated. I would say an educated man, when you say, what do you mean by understanding, insight, and wisdom? I mean, this man has a mind which holds a grasp of the fundamental ideas in terms of which all human problems are to be understood. I mean, ideas, in my vocabulary, are like optical instruments. They're things to see with. I mean, what you're looking at is life, human problems, human situations, the world, nature. And when you don't have many ideas in your head, you're seeing something very shallow. So you don't see it in depth. It's as if you put glasses on and then you had three-dimensional vision and color vision. You see, the environment took on color and shape and form. Well, ideas are seeing instruments, really, optical instruments that enable you to see what's going on, see through things, you see. And I say an educated man is a man whose mind is deeply enriched by ideas that enable him to see more deeply than most other men see.
Ideas, this seems to be your credo, the idea of reaching people with ideas. And of course today we're sort of, despite these headlines, it seems the educated man is beginning to be appreciated, or is he, since Sputnik?
No, I don't think so. There are some good consequences of the furore about Sputnik. I mean, people said, yes, there is something wrong with American education. We aren't doing the job as a result of Sputnik, when you didn't need Sputnik to know that we weren't doing the job.
It has to be a spur from the outside.
But the Sputnik challenge, if it's met in its own terms, is really a misleading thing. Because let me put it to you this way. What is Russia doing that's so remarkable? Is it creating a great system of democratic education for the masses? Is it lifting the level of literacy for all the people of Russia? Not at all. It is an aristocratic system, selecting a very small elite, pushing them very hard, and pushing them how? To become wise men, free men, becoming useful technicians. Now, in that, if we want to use the same methods that Russia uses, we too can produce an elite of technicians that will serve the state. The hard job we have is a totally different job. And I think if we did the hard job well, I'm going to tell you what it is in a moment, one byproduct of it would be a sufficient quantity of engineers and technicians to serve our purposes in the armament race, see? May I read you
Please
a
do.
statement right after Sputnik? This was an article I wrote for the Sun-Times in January 19th, 1958. It was a few weeks after Sputnik. They invited me to say what was wrong with American education in view of all the talk. And I said, the essential trouble is not that we are producing too few scientists, engineers, and technicians, even though that is the case, and even though we sorely need them for the technological advances so important to our economy and military prowess. Our failure goes much deeper than that. We are producing too few men who are prepared for the responsibilities of democratic citizenship, for economic independence, and for the uses of leisure, and for life in a free society. With all the talk about life adjustment and preparation for life, that is precisely what our schools are not doing. We have not adjusted their programs to the demands of life in an industrial democracy in which it is possible for all men to live, as only the few could live in the past. You see, we are in
The
the business.
opportunities are here now. What with the increase in leisure time?
Well, it's a little more than that even. Let me sort
Please.
of make the contrast sharp for you. Take 100 years ago, and if you took more than 100 years ago, the contrast would be even sharper, but even 100 years ago, certainly anything back of that, less than 1% of the population had free time. I mean, less than 1% of the population had free time, by which I mean the other 99% were a submerged group of people, almost all of whose lives, from early childhood till they dropped into the grave, were spent in relatively unrewarding toil.
Making a living.
Barely making a living, but contributing to the wealth of the world. They were unschooled. There was no. They went to work early. You see, there was no schooling, and they had no time to develop the human being as human beings. They were just useful slaves, whether they were actually slaves or not. They weren't citizens either. The ruling class was less. In England, it's hard to remember this. In England, at the beginning of the 19th century, in 1800, less than 10% of the male population had the franchise. Now, what has happened in the last 100 years, since 1850, is one of the most remarkable revolutions that ever took place in the world. I mean, the only reason why we don't celebrate it is that we are living in the middle of it. You don't see it happening, you see. I mean, it's happening right under our feet all the time. In that 100 years, we really moved away from the class-structured societies of the past, with a small ruling class and a large subject or disfranchised class, a very small leisure class and a large working class, to a society in which all our children are going to become citizens with the full rights and privileges of that high office tomorrow. Okay? And all our citizens, all our children, when they grow up tomorrow, are going to have a short work life, and during that work life, the number of working hours is going to be short. Now, you are creating responsible free men with incredible amounts of free time. This is the most serious problem we face, because free time is like a vacuum, see?
It can be good or bad, either way.
It has to be filled. And if it isn't filled with good stuff, it's filled with bad stuff, stuff that will degrade the individual and corrupt society, as I think a good deal of television
And so
corrupts
we're
society.
on the threshold, you suggest, of unprecedented opportunity for learning, but what's being done
more
about
than opportunity, an unprecedented challenge. I mean, we have the opportunity, it was just an opportunity. If we don't solve this problem, if we don't solve the problem of how to school all these children for their responsibilities as citizens and for the use of their free time, they will ruin themselves and us. I mean, this society hasn't got a chance of surviving.
Well, then you're suggesting a change in the climate, then, aren't you, to some extent? That is the attitude toward the intellectual. He's always been looked upon as somewhat suspect, has he not, in our world in the past 100 years?
Yeah, but the thing that worries me about that word is I don't want to separate the intellectual from his fellow men.
All right.
See, I think every human being, I may be a cockeyed idealist, you see, but my faith in human beings is very great indeed. I think we're all rational. And I don't think the difference between a 90 IQ and a 140 IQ is that important. I think the 90 IQ, using those crude figures, people below the medium in the distribution of endowments and gifts, have plenty of intelligence to use. I don't think we've ever used more than 25% of human intelligence.
There's a phrase you use, isn't there? Philosophers should not speak to philosophers.
Oh,
but to people.
never. Yeah,
To
people.
people.
Because
Isn't this connected
it's
to
everybody's problem, you see.
Do you
Thinking,
feel anyone really who has a modicum of...
anyone who's not in an asylum, anyone who is not in an asylum has the duty to think. Has the duty to think, the moral obligation to think for himself.